Hey, it's Max. So here it is. I believe this to be one of very few LEGO Harris, or more specifically Grey Ghost, train models, and from a 30-second Google search this will be the first one to escape the clutches of its designer and make its way out into the world. This video will be slightly different to my previous ones, as I've not built this in real life, and will not for the foreseeable future, more on that in a minute. I was first made aware of the scarcity of Harris models from a comment by Lucen Stubbs Brown on one of my videos. Sorry for stealing your idea, I'm sure your models look great. But my mind didn't start turning over ideas until, believe it or not, I went to the Newport Railway Museum the very next day. I didn't get any footage while I was there because that was not the purpose of the trip, but the reason the museum is important in this story is because they have what I believe to be two of, if not the last Harris trains. After licking my first one, the asbestos was great by the way, I had a sudden urge and inspiration to build one out of LEGO. But that was not without a close contender from the neighbouring Hitachi, but I wanted to finish off my slow-going Commons design before then, and I also wanted an easier build that I could do relatively quickly. As a side note, Harris trains used to run in up to 7 car sets. This puzzled me for a long time as we were only just reintroducing 7-car trains to the network, but recently after seeing them in person I can say that the carriages are a fair bit shorter than modern day ones, which is actually another reason why I chose to build it over the Hitachi. So after deciding what to design, I sat down at my computer, opened Bricklink Studio, hit Ctrl-V, and voila, an a house. Wow, that joke got old fast. Anyway, since I wanted the model to be built to the same 1:44 scale as my other models, the first step was figuring out the dimensions and proportions of the train. First protocol was VIXing, but to my surprise there weren't any dimensions listed. Next, MPTG, but yet again I am let down. In fact, from looking around on Google Images, there are very few pictures of the train online, let alone from different angles, something which would not help me in the long run. After looking around a bit, I disobeyed the commands of my school teachers over the years and submitted myself to Wikipedia. Only problem was there were multiple dimensions listed for the same thing, with no indication of where they came from or where they were used. I ended up marking out rough guides for both listed, and with the help of Ocision's detailed pictures of their models, I managed to come up with a fairly accurate mock-up of what I hoped to be the final design. I later came across a City Skylines asset of the train, which conveniently had what I guess you'd call a blueprint of the train, which confirmed which dimensions were accurate in Wikipedia, so I pressed on. It was around this point that I realised I couldn't use the old train windows as they were too wide for the design, so I accepted that this would not be one of my most accurate models and went with the less detailed windows, but ones that worked. As well as this, I decided to drop the curve towards the base of the train, based on my difficult experience with my Commons model, and the fact that I didn't want to complicate things more than they had to be for the general idea. After laying out these foundations, I experimented with the different liveries from over the ages, and settled on the refurbished Grey Ghost Met livery, as Grey Ghosts not only have a simplified design, but a much easier livery to capture than the others. Up to this point I will mark as day 1, the first afternoon I had spent on the model. A few days passed and I had some more time to work on the model, this time starting on the cab. After a short time of creating what looked eerily like a Siemens, I double-checked the height of the train and realised in my attempts to copy the Ocision model I had overestimated the proportions. After correcting my error, I continued constructing the cab into what ended up being the largest snot construction in the build. Finding a way to connect it to the base was more difficult than I thought it would be, mostly down to the inverted and off-stud sections at the bottom, but I managed to make it work. The yellow rectangle would usually have green stripes across it, but for the sake of simplicity, I thought if I ever built it, stickers would be okay. I have a number of issues with the cab, but on the whole I think the design is very effective for the no longer so simplistic nature I was aiming for. Upon completing the cab design, I put it in the oven to bake for a few days, and took out the roof I prepared earlier so I could make a few changes to it. The pantograph is a modified design based on my personal favourite now, my extrapolis pantograph. There are a few minor improvements I want to make to it, but you get the general idea of it, which is good enough for now. Other than that, there are not many shots of the roof in high enough quality, or at a good angle, to really tell what else is going on up there, so I left it at that. That was day 2. Day 3 is more of a here and there over 2 weeks because I was short on time, and during that time I mainly worked on the undercarriage. The undercarriage was harder to design than my extrapolis, in spite of these amazingly detailed and high quality pictures I took of the real thing at Newport using my state-of-the-art 16K camera, otherwise known as my 1950s flip phone. Because of these, I didn't have to rely on inconsistent MPTG drawings and shadows from videos on YouTube, although that might be because those sources don't exist. The bogies are of a similar design to my extrapolis, which unfortunately makes them a bit too wide, with almost the same base, just different detailing along the side. I've actually wanted to redesign the bogies for my extrapolis for a long time now, using these pieces instead of the more boxy ones, but that's getting off track, pun not intended. The rest of the undercarriage was mostly looking back and forth between the reference images and the model, trying to replicate it as closely as possible. After completing this, I remembered I had forgotten the other 3 carriages in the set, and got to work modifying the design in the way I had previously planned to do. Because I didn't have any reference pictures of the undercarriage from the centre cars, I copy-pasted the stuff from the front cars and called it a day. After the laborious design process, I eventually finished with this. It's not refined, but it's good enough for now. The fact that there are so few source materials mean I don't mind as much about the inaccuracies as I would if it was, say, a HCMT, and believe me, there are many. Overall, I'm very happy with how this model turned out, but there is still one thing I haven't told you, and it may completely ruin it for some. These pieces are not available in light grey! I didn't have many options for the windows, and I had initially picked these for the Victorian Railways livery, which of course I eventually dropped. Now the real train is more of a whitish colour than a grey, but to keep in line with the name and to aid my laziness, I'm sticking with this for now. If I ever purchase the pieces for this model, I will most likely recolour it, whether that be the whole model or dunking the bricks in paint. As I mentioned earlier, the train is smaller than modern ones, and in these comparisons with my Extrapolis, you can see the difference very easily. Because these are both built to the same scale, you can really get a sense of how big or small the real trains are. Designing this model has taught me many things about building with limited source material, and to a lower standard than what I would otherwise like. And one day, maybe I'll get the opportunity to build the model and bring it to its real-life brother. So without more to say, I hope you enjoyed this mock and this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.